And that's why I think even though their intentions were to be a team that focuses on their wide receivers, the result is going to be more tight ends and running backs. You're going to see a lot of throws to the tight ends, a lot of throws to the running backs.
It is the week before. Here on Birds 365. But check it, folks. Football is just around the corner. Here to talk some Eagles football with us is a guy who's been covering them for years, formerly in town, now nationally with The Athletic. Zach Berman jumps aboard here on Birds 365. How are you, ZB?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, Zach. Good to see you. I see you every day, but we'll see.
Exactly.
I did want to start with Zach Ertz because you did a wonderful job kind of encapsulating the entire drama, soap opera, so to speak, when we all thought, I think, really it was 100%. We thought Zach Ertz had played his last down for the Philadelphia Eagles. All of a sudden, we fast forward. We're just over a week away from the season opener. Zach Ertz is here. Zach Ertz is going to be a big part of this offense. What changed, Zach Berman? What do you think was the crux of what went on here?
Well, two things I would say. First off, the Eagles obviously had a price that was set, and they weren't going to give him away. They weren't going to release him. Their price had to be met, and it seems that price wasn't met. So that's one end of it. The other end of it, it seems to be deliberate from Zach Ertz's perspective, and he spoke about this, is there is a playbook, if you will, for disgruntled high-profile athletes to, for lack of a better term, use the scorched earth approach, right? And he said the term he used is some people want him to burn the city down, right, or burn it down. That's an approach that can be effective where, in essence, players operate their leverage, use their leverage to make it an untenable situation for the team and the player to coexist. And Zach Ertz did not do that. He was notably frustrated last year, right? That's not a secret. And he was honest. He said this time last year, going into week one, if you want to juxtapose this year to last year, he said he wants to end his career here. He doesn't think the feeling is mutual, right? Or something along those lines. And John's talked about this in terms of the discord between him and Howie Roseman leading up to week one last year. He was not particularly happy last year. And he said he made a deliberate choice not to leak anything this year, not to ruffle feathers, that if he's going to be here, he's going to accept it. And that seems to be what it is. From his perspective, he's accepted that. He says he's having the most fun he's had in a long time. I think a big part of that is he's healthy. Now, it's easy for us to say this on September 3rd when it's just training camp practices. I think the real test is going to come when they have, let's say, 75, 80 snaps a game to allocate. And how do you split it up between Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz without being a heavy 12 personnel team?
We'll see how it does shake out. That is going to be very interesting on how the new head coach deploys his players. Scorched earth. What do you mean, like Ben Simmons? Never mind. That's for another show and another place at another time. Zach was open to mending fences. Someone had to, from the Eagles' perspective, be part of that mending fences process as well. Old Nick Sirianni, tight end coach, teammates, who helped get these two parties back to a position where Zach Ertz could come in, do an interview, guys like saying, this is the most fun I've had in years. We need to give credit to both sides, certainly Zach himself, who on the Eagles side.
Well, first off, I do think Nick Sirianni wanted him here, right? I think Nick Sirianni saw the talent that Zach Ertz has. And as an offensive coach, as a former pass catcher himself, I think he knows the value of someone who's proven he can get open. So that's part one. And then, I don't have all the particulars here, but as Zach Ertz said, there have been apologies. There have been fence mending here. They figure out a way to reconcile this. And the reality is this is the only franchise where Zach Ertz has ever played. And they've rewarded Zach Ertz over his career. Now, they haven't rewarded him with that third contract or that big contract extension that he was hoping when George Kittle and Travis Kelce got theirs last year. But the relationship between the Eagles and Zach Ertz has been a solid one for most of these past 8 years. So I think there was a cooler heads prevail component of it as well.
Yeah, Zach, I think the most astute part of your article, and everybody should read it at The Athletic. I think you guys are still doing the preseason sale, so everyone should subscribe to that. But Zach, you pointed out, look, when you talk about forgiveness, that means there's something to forgive. When you talk about apologies, that means there was something to apologize before. So I do want to give credit to Nick Sirianni. And I want to throw this out there to see if you noticed the same thing. Nick obviously talks about his core values all the time. Number one is connect. Almost every day, I would say, I've been there every day. You've been there every day. I noticed Nick Sirianni talking to Zach Ertz a little bit longer than, he does a lot of client handing. He spends a lot of time with Zach Ertz. I got to give Nick Sirianni some credit for this. Am I overstating that?
I don't think you're overstating it. I think part of what the Eagles hope makes Nick Sirianni a good coach is that understanding about connecting with players, is his ability to do that, is knowing how to coach different players. I also think, contract issues aside, Zach Ertz is a professional in every sense of the word in terms of how he goes about practice, how he goes about preparation, how he goes about being an NFL player. And I think for a new coaching staff, they appreciate that, right? Like if you are if you're running a training camp and you see the way Zach Ertz practices on August 6th, coaches appreciate that. So I think there's a mutual respect there.
Zach, I want to get a couple of roster positions down with you since the Eagles just cut down this week. We surely haven't had John, but we surely have been reading what you've been putting in the Athletic. Yesterday, made a move, Jack Driscoll to IR. Didn't elevate an offensive lineman to the 53, which means as of right now, they only have four backup guys, one of which is Andre Dillard, who we all assume is just a left tackle, and one of which is Landon Dickerson. We don't know if he's capable of playing that. He's got all of 1 week of practice underneath his belt. We know how much the Eagles think of him and how highly he's regarded in the organization. But can he actually be on the active for this week? And if so, if there is an injury, are they going to feel confident to put him in there and play?
I would be surprised if he's there week one without really much time in full team drills. So look, it's hard to say at this point. I haven't seen a full practice with him out there. So, you see the individual work. We'll see what the practice reports say next week. But my guess is that Nate Herbig is the top interior reserve for week one. But I do think within that 6 week period, it's going to be Landon Dickerson. Otherwise, you have an Alshon Jeffrey situation from last year. So I think that from their calculations, Landon Dickerson's going to be back active in the I don't want to say in the starting lineup, but in the game day actives within the first 6 weeks of the season.
Now, I think one of the most surprising players in camp, Zach, has been Brett Toth, and I think people don't realize how much the Eagles like him, how much the Eagles value him. All of a sudden, we get to the final 53. Not only is he there, but Jack Driscoll goes to IR. He's been playing left tackle. He played right tackle in college at Army. That's his natural position. He played left guard. Is he going to be the swing tackle week one?
He could be, right? Now, it depends what you do with Dillard. Now, the extra game day active spot for offensive lineman means you potentially have both up. But I would imagine Dillard is active. I don't think Dillard would be inactive. But because Toth can play both sides, you are right about that. That is something to watch. And I like what you said about Toth in terms of people not knowing how much the Eagles like him. As a case in point, if you want to know why the Eagles cut vested veterans like Jordan Howard this year and Raven Clark and some of these other guys who they brought back to the practice squad, and maybe kept some of these players on rookie contracts who were not standout performers during the summer. Look at Brett Toth in 2019. The Eagles waived him at cuts. They thought they were going to get him through to the practice squad, and they were none too pleased when Arizona claimed him. And they are very cognizant of not losing young talent that a year from now, 2 years from now, they think can be rotational players. So I think Brett Toth is an example of that.
All right, let's talk about Eagles and roster moves, and very wary of losing a guy. I don't think J.J. Arcega-Whiteside fell into that category, but maybe you do, and that's why I'm going to ask the question. He makes the roster. Fulgham doesn't. Hightower doesn't. I don't think anybody thought Hightower was in the mix, but Fulgham had that really solid four-game run last year. Is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside still on the 53 because, yeah, they thought they would lose him if they put him out there and couldn't bring him back to the practice squad the day they did, the same way they did with the two previously mentioned wide receivers? Is it the fact that they think this is it? This is the breakout year. He's actually going to live up to that second draft round status, or because he's become such an outstanding special teams player, or so we've been told. I haven't necessarily seen that from my own two eyes. Why is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside on this roster?
Well, I don't think it's I've seen fans say that they don't want to get rid of their former second-round pick, and I don't think that's the case. I think they've accepted, for lack of a better term, the sunk cost element of that pick, right? I think there's a few things here. If it was me putting the roster together, I probably would have kept I would have kept Fulgham because he has demonstrated performance in games. But if you're going to get up there and you're going to talk about competition like Nick Sirianni has and it's a new staff, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside has been better, has been more consistent, has been a better practice player during the summer. And that should matter, number one. Number two, Travis Fulgham was a top 3 receiver at the beginning of camp. He's not anymore, right? If you're receiver 4 or 5, special teams matters. And J.J., for his part, he's essentially become Mac Hollins here, right? Where he'll help out on special teams, and he's a big body receiver for you in a depth role. And JJ, for whatever criticism is levied against him, and from a performance perspective, it's fair. He is a hard worker. He is a guy that cares. He is a guy that does the right things Monday to Saturday, and that matters when you're talking about the number 5 receiver. So I think those factors are why he's on the team. I think he earned a spot on the team as the number 5 receiver. He hasn't earned a spot to be a starting receiver, which is what they drafted him to be, but he's earned a spot to be a depth guy for them.
All right, Zach, going back to what you said about Brett Toth, the Eagles were none too pleased when they lost him via waivers. The Eagles picked up a player via waivers yesterday that Jonathan Gannon is very familiar with from his time in Indianapolis. Don't want to butcher his name. Andre Chachure, who's a defensive back coming in from the Colts. Now, I talked to a couple of Colts writers. They thought he was going to make the team out there. A little bit of versatility, can play corner, can play safety. You think this is just a flyer? Do you think this is a significant plan? Obviously, it's difficult to get him up to speed this close to week 1 of the regular season. Is this going to be a roster juggling scenario? He'll eventually end up on the practice squad. What do you make of that waiver claim?
Sure. Well, I think the familiarity with Jonathan Gannon certainly helps. That's a position that I thought the Eagles would look to address post-cuts. I thought they would look DB, defensive line. They brought back Ridgeway, and then potentially wide receiver or in the backfield, and there's still time there. But no, I think he's someone who can help them with depth. He has versatility. The Eagles are light at cornerback as it is, and Josiah Scott's hurt, so it makes sense for them to add somebody. I frankly don't know much about him as a player, but I heard the same reports you have in terms of he looked really good in Colts camp, and certainly after a year with Gannon in the room last year, the Eagles have a degree of insight on him.
All right, Zach, you got to see, like everyone else, 3 preseason games, but you guys got to see all the snaps in the joint practice games, which the Eagles at least verbally put a lot of emphasis on and weighed heavily in decisions and roster making. I need your interpretation of the play calling on both sides of the ball. We probably spend that much more time offensively, certainly ready, willing, and able to second guess after the fact on play calling. Nick Sirianni arguably kept it very vanilla in preseason. They don't want to tip their hand. They don't want to show their stuff, but they do want to get enough work in that they can evaluate their own players and the ability to do what they're going to call when the season starts this Sunday. Jonathan Gannon, same thing on defense. There were certain things he was going to do, certain things he wasn't going to show. Give me the Zach Berman rating on the play calling of both the new play caller, the head coach, Nick Sirianni, and the guy who's going to call the defense is Jonathan Gannon so far.
It's a good question, and the truth is it still is incomplete. And the reason I say that, even after watching the joint practices, is you start to get a sense of their scheme. You know, for instance, on defense, they're going to be multiple in the truest sense of the word. They're going to have more different types of packages than you've seen from, you know, the Eagles in the past. I think on offense, you're going to see a lot of pre-snap movement. You're going to see them mix and match personnel. You're not going to see a dedicated slot receiver, for instance. I think you're going to see guys move around. With all that said, I think more so than in the past, they're going to be matchup dependent, right? And you hear that sometimes with the Patriots, for instance. I think they're going to be a team that, because of the flexibility that they've tried to create on both sides of the ball, they might look different against Atlanta than they would against San Francisco. And so what I haven't yet seen is Nick Sirianni put a plan together for the defense they're facing. And I think that's critical. There are, you know, I think Nick Sirianni has been impressive in a lot of the things you look for in August. But what I haven't yet seen is him as a play caller, him as a game manager. And those are two big variables that I frankly, those are the two big things that I'm most fascinated to watch when they get out there on Sunday against Atlanta.
Well, let's talk about the offense, and obviously we focus on the quarterback, and we'll get to Jalen Hurts with you, Zach. But we did mention a little bit about the receivers with JJ, but he's the number 5 guy. When you look at the top 3 receivers on this team, a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism, maybe more than ever for the Philadelphia Eagles as a franchise, but also there's uncertainty. I mean, we're talking about a rookie who has unbelievable talent and 2 second-year players who don't have a lot of what you say demonstrated performance. You and I have been covering this league long enough to know when you have a lot of questions, maybe some are answered positively, but not all of them. There's going to be some negatives. So How much does that concern you with so much uncertainty at the wide receiver position?
It would concern me if they didn't have what they have at tight end and they weren't going to use their backs the way they are in the backfield. Frankly, I'm more fascinated to see if they use the receivers the way I think Nick wants to use his receivers, right? You know, he's a former wideout himself, like you know. I think they wanted to be more of an 11 personnel team. But like you mentioned, if we wrote down the top 5 skill guys, there might be one wide receiver on that list, right? And that's Devontae Smith. So on a play-to-play basis, how many wide receivers are you going to have on the field? If you want to be 11 personnel, so if you want to have 3 receivers on the field, who's coming off? Is Ertz not playing? Is Goddard not playing? Because both those guys want to be out there. Now, to answer the question succinctly about wide receivers, I don't have questions about Devontae Smith. Now, I don't think he's going to be the producer he was last year at Alabama, but that's prolific production. I still think he's going to have the most targets and the most production that a wide receiver's had here since Alshon in 2017 and maybe since Jeremy Maclin in 2014. Beyond that, on a game-to-game basis, I don't know what you're getting from Jalen Reagor. I'm intrigued by Quez Watkins, but we haven't really seen him much in games yet, right? So there are a lot of questions there, and that's why I think even though their intentions were to be a team that focuses on their wide receivers, the result is going to be more tight ends and running backs. You're going to see a lot of throws to the tight ends, a lot of throws to the running backs.
One of the things I will give Howie Roseman credit for is that he realizes that at times you must be fluid in your thinking and you must be fluid in your actions. If 3 games into this season, Zach Ertz is in the top 5 in tight end receptions and yards per catch, He's already got a handful of touchdowns in the first couple of weeks. Did the Eagles do a 180 and say, we want one of our tight ends under contract going forward for next year? Do we try and get a reasonable, maybe more short-term, not 5-year, but 2-year deal done with Zach Ertz and believe he's still got that much left in the tank and take our chances with our other tight end who we've been negotiating with to get an extension done? Or do they double down on Goddard because, yeah, Zach Ertz is making his name again and is going to hit the free agent market and a better payday is going to be out there for him? How does Howie handle tight end if Zach Ertz in the first several games of the season looks like the Zach Ertz of old, not the guy playing through an ankle injury last year?
Yeah, good question. And the truth there is that their approach to Zach Ertz has never been because they don't think Zach Ertz is a good player. It's because the presence of Dallas Goedert. They drafted Dallas Goedert to essentially replace Zach Ertz. He's 26 years old. He's an ascending player. All things being equal, they would rather re-sign the 26-year-old than the 30-year-old. Now, it often comes down to price too. I don't see a scenario where both are here long term. So you have to commit to one. I still think they commit to the 26-year-old, but it's not implausible to think that if they still think Zach Ertz has football left, that they look at Dallas Goedert as an asset. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to keep Goddard and not Ertz long term, but it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility.
Let me follow up, John. I'll let you get in here in a second. How does Tyree Jackson play into that? If they're going, if Ertz does look really good, and yes, you want a tight end you can look forward to, maybe not with a 30-year-old guy, but if they like Tyree Jackson that much and think he could be the guy 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, does that factor into how they look at their top two tight ends, how their third best tight end is developing, looking like a possible option down the road?
Not at all. I don't think they can make any decisions with the top two guys based on Tyree Jackson's potential. Okay. I think if it works out that Tyree Jackson is a productive player, even better. You have two tight ends there. But if they took Kyle Pitts, number 6 this year, for instance, if he was there and they took him at 6, that changes the Goddard equation. I don't think Tyree Jackson's presence affects the Goddard equation.
Well, Zach, we always talk about the Sam Bradford scenario. In a lot of ways, I think Howie Roseman was waiting for that, at least at the start of training camp, a potential injury. He got it. Ironically, he got it in Minnesota. All of a sudden, here comes Rick Spielman. He's making a phone call. He's asking about Dallas Goedert. Now, is that as simple as Howie will listen to anything and say, well, give me a first-round pick, and that ends that, and the Vikings go in another direction? Or is this relationship with Zach Ertz repaired to the point where they would consider something like that if somebody at least knocked their socks off?
Sure. I don't know the particulars of the Minnesota situation, but I do know, and Howie has said this. Everyone's available in essence, right? There's a price for everyone, number one, and number two. I think that if for instance, when there was all this discussion about them possibly being a suitor for Deshaun Watson, and if it was going to take players in addition to the picks, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that you would think Dallas Goedert might be a player included in that. So the optionality of having Ertz here, if you did have to move Goddard, I certainly think that is a relevant conversation to have, but I don't think they've like made a decision to move on from Goddard. I still think they're an organization that wants Goddard here long term.
All right, Zach, I'm going to have to ask you one of those read between the lines questions, which aren't easy because you'd love to have evidence for your own edification when you're asked an opinion question on what a player is going to be able to do. We didn't see a whole hell of a lot of Ryan Carrigan in the preseason. Injury issues, moving him back and forth between stand-up outside linebacker and defensive end. I know what I saw last year with him, and I thought he was an excellent sign by the Eagles, but I'm not even sure how he fits into the mix. As of right now, going into week number 1, we assume he's going to be cleared. We assume he's going to be one of the active players that week. What do the Eagles think they can get out of Ryan Carrigan And I guess I'm kind of asking you to read what the coaches are saying, because we haven't had too much ability to judge it with our own two eyes.
Yeah, a guy who's proven he can get to the quarterback, and you can't have enough of those. Now, you mentioned the stand-up pass rusher role. He had the thumb injury. We really didn't see him practice much after the first week, and we didn't see him much in that role. And I think that is, if you're looking at where they can use him, I would try to see if he can play Sam linebacker for you or take some snaps there, because you have solid depth on the defensive line. They have a hard enough time finding enough snaps, in my opinion, for Graham, Sweat, and Barnett as it is. Now you throw Carrigan into the mix. But if you're saying, do I want to play Carrigan at linebacker and take TJ Edwards off the field and move Alex Singleton over, whatever it may be, that would make more sense to me. And he's obviously been a stand-up player before. So I think that they haven't really shown this yet, in part because Carrigan's been injured. But if I'm reading between the lines, I'm curious to see if he can help them in that role. I know he can help you as your fourth defensive end. I just don't know if, when you have a player of Ryan Kerrigan's talent, and I get it, Chris Long was once your fourth defensive end too, but if you have a player of Kerrigan's talent, if it's better to keep him there, or if you can find a different role for him.
All right, Zach, last one from me. And before I get to it, I want to say read Zach at The Athletic. Obviously does a great job with Bo Wolf, 3-time reigning roster poll champion. I have to say that. I was in second with Zach Berman and my buddy Ed Kratz. But, yeah, I'm jealous of Bo. We'll say that. And Sheil Kapadia also, yeah, our old friend who does such a great job from a national perspective as well. Got to end it with the quarterback one. We could finally call him the quarterback one. They finally acknowledged that, so that's a good thing. You mentioned a little bit about Deshaun Watson. That's been looming. It looks like it's shut down, at least for now. But here we go. Gardner Minshew's in here 2 weeks before the start of the regular season. Look, doesn't mean anything early in the season. You can't ramp him up. But let's be honest, Zach. He's more accomplished than Jalen Hurts. We all know Jalen's personality. He seems to handle things much better than Carson Wentz did in a similar situation, at least from bringing in a potential talent. At some point, though, is that self-defeating to constantly just bring in players at that position that could argue, hey, man, why shouldn't I be the number one quarterback?
I don't think so. I mean, fundamentally, if you're getting a player like Minshew, with what he's done in his first 2 years for a 6th-round pick, and he's under contract through 2022, that's a no-brainer for you. That he's at worst, he's your backup quarterback next year. So it makes sense in that regard. I think the organizational investment in Jalen Hurts as a 2nd-round pick and the organizational investment in Minshew, it's considerably different. So they've shown Hurts what they, by investing a 2nd-round pick, they've shown Hurts what they thought of him. Now,
but let me jump in real quick, Zach. The investment was different last year as well. And this is what I talk about in a vacuum. You're right. Look, guy with that kind of talent for a 6th-round pick, no brainer. But we've already seen the mental part of it, the human part of it, where it can affect starting quarterbacks. A lot of teams in this league believe, look, the backup should be there to support the starter, and certainly the 3rd stringer. I don't know if the Eagles believe that. Is that fair or unfair?
No, that is fair. And clearly that was a calculation that the Eagles made last year that did not work out at all, right? Now, Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts are different quarterbacks in different situations. I would say that Jalen Hurts hasn't yet established himself as the long-term quarterback here. I still think the Eagles want that, the options at that position. I don't think they're viewing Minshew as a guy who can be their franchise quarterback. So I don't know if that's legitimate competition for that title, but I don't think they're operating as if let's not ruffle Jalen Hurts' feathers. Like, if anything, Jalen Hurts is on a 1-year tryout to show that he can be that quarterback. Otherwise, the Eagles are using their draft picks and their cap space next year to replace him. So the reality is that if Jalen Hurts is worried about Minshew being here, he won't like what could potentially be coming down the pike, right? And I think Jalen Hurts is, if anything, he's dealt with this before, right? I mean, he got replaced at Alabama by Tua, and he's been in this spot. He is competitive. I think he understands the way this works. There hasn't been that type of like convincing organizational commitment to Jalen Hurts yet, but I don't know if Jalen Hurts has earned that convincing organizational commitment yet. So I really think that's the big storyline this year is, can Jalen Hurts become your guy long term?
All right, Zach, last thing for me will be a statement, and then I need you to tell me, Jody, take the green-colored glasses off, or you got a point there, kid. I actually believe it's advantageous for the Eagles to be on the road here week 1 because Nick Sirianni is coaching in his first game. I don't know that there's a home stadium advantage for a new coach. He is new to him anywhere, can be anywhere on the planet. It's still going to be his first game ever. There are things he's going to have to know, hurdles he's going to have to get over. Get the road game out of the way, because Eagle fans have been known to second guess before, and if his play calling isn't getting first downs in the first period of the first half, he might actually hear about it from the Eagle fans before the first half is over. I think it's a plus that the Eagles are on the road week 1. Too much optimism, too much glass half full guy, or do I actually have a point to make there?
Well, all things being equal, I would rather be at home than on the road, right? And especially, you want to start the season 1-0. There's a difference there, especially for a first-year coach. And, watching that Ohio State-Minnesota game last night, you see, the difference in a game when the crowd's there. It just changes the environment. That said, I don't think going down to Atlanta is going to be, it'll be a good test, but it's not like starting the season in Kansas City, right? So, I see the point of what you're saying, but if they lose week 1 to Atlanta, it's not like the crowd's gonna be more forgiving in week 2 in Philly. So
you got a point there. That's very true. Thank you for
in that sense, I would probably rather start in week 1 when you're 0-0.
Exactly right. Zach Berman, always a pleasure. We appreciate whenever you come on. We will continue to read you week in and week out in the Athletic. Tell your compatriots we send our regards to them as well.
Thank you.
Zach Berman of the Athletic here with us on Birds 365. All right. Mac and Mac guys, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac. We'll come back. We still got a lot of Eagles conversation to go here on this Friday edition of Birds.